Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledges the fighting with Iran has stopped for now, but he is promising to respond, quote unquote, with force if Iran attacks in the future. He adds that he firmly stands by Israel's right to act against its enemies. Well, they definitely have one. Well, Max Gorden is in Dubai with the very latest. So, Max, what we do know is that Kuwait in the last few days has taken some incoming, and Iran will hit out into its neighbors. It will use Hezbollah now from Lebanon to hit Israel.
Yeah, absolutely, Harris. The Middle East really is on edge, and the entire Gulf is on edge after we saw Iran and Israel trading fire in the early morning hours today. Now, this is the first time the two have been fighting since this ceasefire went into effect about 2 months ago. Now, this all started because of Israeli operations in southern Lebanon. They struck a Hezbollah stronghold in a suburb of Beirut. Iran then struck Israel with a barrage of missile fire. Most of those missiles were either intercepted or they landed in open areas. And then Israel, they responded as well, striking deep into Iranian territory. They struck an Iranian petrochemical facility as well as other military targets. Now, since this back and forth started, the fighting has since stopped. But Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking earlier in this evening, he said that they reserve their right to defend themselves. The Israeli military does and the Israeli people do, and that they will strike out once again if there is a renewed fighting. Iran, on the other hand, they say that they will renew their strikes if there is more fighting in southern Lebanon. Israel, they have continued their operations in southern Lebanon, trying to root out Hezbollah. And they continue to do so. So we'll have to see how these events continue to unfold. But again, the entire Gulf still on edge as this fighting has come to a stop for now. But we'll just have to see how things unfold. Harris?
All right, Max, you set us up for a good discussion. Thank you for bringing us the facts from all the way in Dubai. Kaylee, look, the patience of this president is, I think, really a novelty. I mean, we haven't seen this. You bring a war to halt for north of 60 days in a ceasefire that's been shaky from the beginning, and you continue to hold that line. But you know who wants war? Iran.
Yeah, they do. And the president, and I commend him for this, will not settle. There's so much pressure on him politically to get to a fast deal. Get this deal done. Gas prices come down. You know, let's work on this. And you hear it from the left. You hear it from even people on the right. But this president is not going to get a quick deal. He wants a good deal. And the one cornerstone of that deal, and we've heard it time and time again, is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. He wants the nuclear dust in the hands of the United States. He wants to see it himself come out of Iran or destroy it in place, and he will not settle until that cornerstone exists. He could make an Obama-era deal like this, with sunset clauses and expiration dates, but then where would that leave our children? This president is concerned about protecting future American generations.
Well, it's also the timing of making a deal like that, because we've got so much invested right now.
Yeah.
And the patience of the entire United States with higher gas prices, so on and so forth. Wall Street's holding its own right now. Mm-hmm. But there's only so much that you can invest and not have something to show for it. So, of course, he's going to get what he went for. My question is, who has to pay for that? Because it looks like all the neighbors are going to pay a heavy price, Lawrence, with their lives.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that the president is weighing. You know, I understand what the media is doing right now when they try to make it seem like the president doesn't care about the gas prices and what's happened domestically.
TDS.
It's also very deceptive, because we know this was the strategy of the Iranians to begin with, is that they wanted economic pressure put on the United States until the president would cave and make some type of deal. The president is weighing two things. First, when you look at the nuclear dust, and he's been public about this now, he was concerned about sending American troops in there to get it because that would be a high casualty, potentially, event. And so he's weighing that. But also, he has been able to develop this relationship with the Gulf states, and Iran has honestly pushed the Gulf states more into our arms because they decided to attack them all. We have great defense systems. Israel is right behind us, and we provide some support of them. But these Gulf allies, they do not have the same type defense systems that we have. And so he wants to try to get a deal, but he realizes that there is going to be a point in time where he looks at it, and if they're not serious about it, then he's going to have to strike. But he's not going to just do that from a callous standpoint. He doesn't shoot from the hip in that way.
And by the way, I mean, we've seen a couple of things. I had Victoria Coates on, who was a former deputy national advisor in Trump's first term. Now she's heading up national security advisory for Heritage Foundation. She said something really eye-popping. First of all, the UAE has a golden dome because of this president nurturing those and fostering those relationships in the Middle East, that now you have another country that can start to defend itself.
Correct.
You've seen Kuwait have to hit back. We had to get involved too, because our base was in the middle of it last week. And so you've got that. But then she said, can you imagine another time in history where you've got Damascus, Syria coming to the table? You've got Beirut having meaningful conversations and meetings with Israel. Israel, with those two countries talking to each other. That is amazing. Unfortunately, Lebanon does not control Hezbollah, but it is what it is. That's monumental.
It is monumental, and not to go too much in the weeds, but we're in the middle of a sectarian conflict right now. Sunni and Shia are going at it right now. Now, you got to realize in some of these Gulf states, they have radicals in their population, which is why you hear many of them say, you know, although we realize that Israel is right on this, the United States is right on this, we're not ready to join the Abraham Accords just because we don't want to tick off our people. So the president is weighing all of this. I'm not saying what's happening domestically does not matter, but we're talking about monumental world peace going on right now from radical Islamic terrorism.
Yeah, and a notable date and a notable quote. Today's the 100th day of the war in Iran. And when it comes to the quote, last week President Trump was asked what his definition of a ceasefire was. And he said, when it comes to the Middle East, it means shooting in a more moderate manner. I mean, how true is that? It has been a whirlwind 24 hours, and it really ended in the 5 a.m. hour this morning when the president posted on Truth Social, Israel and Iran must immediately stop shooting. And then a couple hours later, the IRGC announced that it is halting attacks against Iran. Another thing I want to bring up is that there are apparently protests taking place in Iran right now. There's student protests.
That's right.
And they are angry about the Iranian education system. So separate from the war, but also linked in that there are a lot of people inside Iran right now that are very angry and willing to still protest over the oppressive Iranian government. And how brave must you be as an Iranian protester right now?
Are you seeing some of, and of course we don't have eyes on all of it, we can't, but I'm curious about what I'm reading about the potential for people wanting to be armed. I mean, they've got a mess on their hands now from inside the country because they outnumber the IRGC. And
there was reporting that the Trump administration did try to provide weapons to Iranian protesters and they were intercepted. So that is another thing. That is a really big deal. You got to arm these protesters. But the internet is still partially up in Iran right now, which is a very good thing for these protesters. So
and
that
for their
they can
commerce.
See what each other are doing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're sort of intersecting now after decades and decades of a tolerance with disdain, I would say, by the Gulf allies or by our Gulf allies, the neighbors of Iran and the radical Islamists in that area, right? That was sort of a blight on that area. And many of those countries and those kingdoms had nothing. They did not want anything to do. Like they didn't want it at all. But they tolerated it slightly because it was sort of this latent volcano. And I think now, not only has our commander-in-chief aligned our business interests and economy so tightly, but also a willingness for these countries to step up and sort of realize this has gone on too long. I can't look the other way for another decade. And when you look at the history of those heads of state and those royal members who were assassinated throughout the years because of making peace with the Jews, I mean, there's been a sordid and horrible history of those that sought peace and sought progress and paid for it with their lives because of these radical Islamists. And I think, therefore, the reality, my point is that that's why, in my opinion, this administration is so... I respect them so much for prioritizing true allies and relationships and intelligence. Because what did we see in the prior administration? We saw a complete severance of that. There are men and women who operate in the shadows for this country that dedicate their lives to fostering the relationship so that people can live freely, so that democracy can be fomented, and so that there can be this prosperity. And to have that bucked, to have our allies just ignored and dropped and deserted like we did with Afghanistan, my point is that that needs to be fostered, because as we move forward past this conflict now in these short-term days, there is still a long-term future we are looking at where there is a sworn enemy of ours, where the sole identity is to eradicate us and the Jews from the planet. And so it's incumbent upon us to foster those relationships so that we always have, team pressure against what can be sort of resurfaced eventually.
You know what's so interesting, too, about what you just said, when the true allies, the true friends and partners, I would call them, look at what happened at the beginning of this war 100 days ago with members of NATO. Not all, just some.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, heck, even if it were only one, it's a problem. And so to be able to identify the people who have your back, for whom you'd have theirs as well, I think is really the ultimate importance here. All right, the House Oversight Committee.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.